All right, let's talk about where this is going to go. I've mentioned this a little bit over the past couple of days, but I do think it's a big problem. The Republicans now, we're starting to hear them say that this is not about Obamacare anymore. This is about winning. Michael Grimm, Republican from New York, says it's not about Obamacare anymore. We're not going to be disrespected, says conservative Rhett Marlin Stutzman from Indiana. We have to get something out of this. I don't know what that even is.
Read that quote again. Read that whole quote.
Listen to what this guy says. We're not going to be disrespected. This is now about respect for the Republican caucus. We have to get something out of this. And I don't know what that even is. In other words, why are we doing this? I don't know. But you better come up with something that will make us stop, because I have to go home and prove that this was worthwhile. Being reported in the Washington Examiner, as well as that quote, House Republican leaders will drive their rank and file particularly hard to support a debt ceiling proposal that includes provisions on tax and entitlement reform and to other GOP priorities. So this is where the House leadership is going, to a grand bargain. I'm going to read that quote again, folks. I think I said this on the Better Half the other day. For President Obama, his number one agenda in this is to not have the legacy of the one who empowered the Republicans to use the debt ceiling time and time again as a means of extortion. His legacy is not tied up in, I wouldn't negotiate. He takes that position because that is a tactic. His agenda, one of the pieces on his sort of bucket list for a legacy, is to make sure that this dynamic does not happen again. The other thing on his bucket list, which we have said time and time again, is to have entitlement reform, to cut Social Security, to cut Medicare. It's in his budget this year. They were talking about this in 2009 before the inauguration. They were talking about it last week when they sent out their chief advisor out onto CNN. Entitlement reform, grand bargain. And this is what we're starting to hear. Politico. Government shutdown is a grand bargain, the only way out. Many pragmatic House Republicans have come to a simple conclusion. The best chance to fund the government, raise the debt ceiling, and extract any concession from President Obama is to strike a big budget deal. Yes, the grand bargain is back. It's the only common thread these days that runs from House Republican leadership down through the rank and file. Privately, a healthy number of pragmatic Republicans understand that Obamacare is not going to be defunded or even touched in the debt ceiling and the government funding negotiations. At this point, the strong stand against funding government is more about standing firm against Democrats than actually stripping money from Obamacare. They're on a jihad, ladies and gentlemen. And President Obama's response on Wednesday on CNBC. The message I have for the leaders is very simple. As soon as we get a clean piece of legislation that reopens the government, and there is a majority for that right now in the House of Representatives, until we get that done, until we make sure Congress allows Treasury to pay for things that Congress has already authorized, that being the debt ceiling, we're not going to engage in a series of negotiations. However, he said then he is open to negotiating. on things like entitlement reform. He said on Wednesday that the extra money in terms of revenue, remember, this has been the thing that has prevented a grand bargain in the past. Democrats insisting on new taxes, not just new revenue, new taxes. On Wednesday, he said extra money could be raised by closing tax loopholes, not raising income taxes. In other words, I'm down for just saying that we got new revenues by closing loopholes. Loopholes are a joke, folks. The day closing tax loopholes, any statutory language is signed to close tax loopholes, is the day before those loopholes start to get unwound.